Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
It all started the day my mom, Sarah, had to take my older sister, Chloe, to a statewide debate tournament in the city. Since it meant a full day of stilted silence in auditoriums, Mom decided I'd be better off with my Aunt Maeve and my cousins, Tess and Nora. Tess was 17 and Nora 16, 3 and 2 years older than me, but we'd always clicked. They were a whirlwind of muddy cleats and band t-shirts, and while I never stood a chance against them in any sport, they made losing feel like part of the fun. That Saturday morning, we pulled up to Aunt Maeve's rambling old house. The cousins met us on the porch, a worn-out football already tucked under Tess's arm. After Mom left with the standard, "Be good, Leo, and listen to your aunt," we thundered into the backyard. Everything was normal until my overzealous kick sent the ball arcing in a perfect, tragic parabola straight into the murky pond that bordered the garden. "Nice one, city boy," Tess shouted, laughing. I stalked to the edge, reaching for a branch to snag it. My foot slid on a patch of slick, algae-covered stone. I flailed, a clumsy windmill of arms, trying to throw my weight back, but momentum had other plans. I landed, with a sickening squelch, hip-deep in the cold, silty water. Tess and Nora howled with laughter as they hauled me out, my jeans heavy and dripping with pond scum. Aunt Maeve, drawn by the commotion, was significantly less amused. Her expression was a rare storm cloud. She scolded me sharply for my carelessness near the pond, then marched me inside, peeling my sodden t-shirt off over my head and leaving me in my soaked jeans while she tossed my clothes into the wash with a huff. When I emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel that smelled like lavender, Aunt Maeve was waiting with a sigh. "Well, Leo, we don't have any of your brother's old clothes here. And the girls' jeans won't fit you. Let me see what I can find." That's when the world tilted. She returned not with a spare tracksuit or an oversized shirt, but with an armful of history. A deep emerald velvet dress, the kind with a high collar and puffed sleeves. A delicate, lace-edged chemise to wear underneath. Thick, creamy wool stockings. And, most terrifyingly, a pair of simple silk bloomers. My stomach plummeted. "I can't wear that." My voice was a squeak. Aunt Maeve raised a single, formidable eyebrow. "Would you rather spend the day shivering in that towel? Or perhaps your muddy jeans?" I hesitated, the cold of the tile floor seeping into my feet. "You promised your mother you would listen to me," she said, her voice softer now, but firm. Defeated, I gave a tiny, miserable nod. Tess and Nora were supposed to help, but mostly they just tormented me. "Hold still, Cinderella," Tess cackled, trying to fasten a button at my neck. The velvet was heavy, impossibly soft against my skin. The stockings were warm and snug. The chemise rustled with a sound I'd only ever heard in movies. When I was finally dressed, Aunt Maeve took a brush to my damp hair, parting it neatly. She didn't add a ribbon, but her touch was surprisingly gentle. "There," she said, turning me towards the long, antique mirror in her hallway. "Go on. Have a look." I didn't want to, but I did. And I stopped breathing. It wasn't me. The boy staring back was gone. In his place was a stranger with wide, dark eyes and a face made pale and serious by the rich green velvet. It wasn't a costume. It felt real. This person looked quiet and thoughtful and oddly familiar, like a dream I'd forgotten I'd had. Tess, for once, was silent. It was Nora who spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Wow, Leo. You look peaceful." And behind us, I saw Aunt Maeve's reflection. She wasn't smiling. She was watching me with an expression of intense, heartbreaking recognition. The rest of the day was a blur of disconnected moments. I was mortified, convinced I looked ridiculous. But as the hours wore on, a strange alchemy began. I didn't hate it. The weight of the velvet felt like a hug. The way the skirt swayed when I walked, it felt deliberate. Graceful. And when Nora shyly offered me a cookie, calling me Luna because I looked like something from a storybook, my face burned, but not just from shame. It was a flicker of something else. Something like pleasure. By the time Mom and Chloe returned, I had forgotten I was even wearing it. Chloe's jaw dropped. What on earth are you wearing? Mom just stared, her face a mask of confusion. Maeve? What is this? His clothes were soaked, Aunt Maeve said simply, her gaze meeting mine in the rearview mirror as we drove away. We made do. And I had the unsettling feeling that this was far more than just making do. A week later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived. Mom handed it to me at the breakfast table, her expression carefully neutral. It's from your Aunt Maeve. My fingers trembled as I tore the seal. Inside, on heavy cardstock, was an invitation written in elegant, looping cursive. You are cordially invited to our annual midsummer garden party. Sunday at 2 o'clock. Formal attire required. At the bottom, in smaller, more personal script, were 2 lines. Leo, we'd love for you to come. And Luna is invited too. I nearly choked on my toast. Chloe snatched the invitation, her eyes widening. Luna, is she serious? Mom sighed, but it was a different kind of sigh this time, one of resignation, not frustration. Your aunt has always been dramatic. But the way she looked at me, a deep, searching gaze, made me feel like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. That night, I lay in bed, the invitation on my nightstand. I should have been horrified. I should have wanted to rip it to shreds. Instead, I found myself tracing the letters of the name. Luna. I remembered the reflection in the mirror, the quiet stranger who felt more like me than I did. And a terrifying, exhilarating thought bubbled up from somewhere deep inside. I wanted to meet her again. I groaned and pulled my pillow over my head. What was happening to me? Sunday came like an oncoming train. A package had arrived from Aunt Maeve, addressed to me. Inside, there was no note, just neatly folded clothes. A soft, ivory-colored blouse with pearl buttons. A navy blue pinafore dress made of sturdy, brushed cotton with a wide satin sash. Knee-high gray socks. And a new pair of simple silk shorts, this time in navy blue. Mom found me in my room, staring at the outfit laid out on my bed. She sat beside me, her fingers tracing the satin of the sash. You don't have to wear this, you know, she murmured, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. We can just tell her you're not feeling well. I swallowed against the lump in my throat. I know, but I wanted to. And that admission, even just to myself, felt like jumping off a cliff. Mom's hands, surprisingly steady, helped me with the buttons. She didn't say a word as she tied the sash into a perfect, crisp bow at my back. Her silence was more comforting than any words could have been. The moment we arrived, Tess and Nora were on us. Luna. Tess grinned, but it was a warm, welcoming grin this time. She linked her arm through mine. We saved you a seat. Nora leaned in. That color is perfect on you. My face was on fire, but I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. Aunt Maeve greeted me with a kiss on the cheek that smelled of roses and earth. I'm so glad you came, she said, her voice low. Then, quieter still, for my ears only, it takes courage to be yourself, Leo. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't hate hearing it. The real shock came when Chloe cornered me by the lemonade pitcher. She crossed her arms, her debate captain glare in full force. Okay, Leo. What's the real story? I tensed. What do you mean? This isn't just a joke for you, is it? Her eyes scanned my face. You like this. I opened my mouth to issue a flat denial, but the lie caught in my throat. I couldn't say it. Chloe's expression softened. It's okay, she said, nudging my shoulder. I won't tell anyone. She paused, taking a sip of her lemonade. It's weird, she added. But you do look happy. As the party wound down, Aunt Maeve pressed a small, square envelope into my hand. For your scrapbook, she whispered. Inside was a photograph, me, Luna, standing by the rose bushes, a shy, genuine smile on my face. And a note. This doesn't have to be a secret, my love. Not forever. I clutched the photo, my heart hammering against my ribs. Because for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder. What if she was right? The photograph burned a hole in my desk drawer. Every night, I'd pull it out, staring at the person in the navy pinafore. Luna. I was starting to understand that she wasn't a character I was playing. She was a part of me I had never known existed. Then, one rainy afternoon, Chloe came into my room without knocking. I barely had time to slide the photo under my textbook. But she saw the motion. Her eyes narrowed. Then, to my utter astonishment, she just sat on the edge of my bed. "You look at that picture a lot, don't you?" she said quietly. I braced for the teasing, the questions, the judgment. Instead, she sighed. I knew it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and metallic. A delicate silver chain with a tiny crescent moon charm. "I got this for your birthday," she admitted, her cheeks pink. "But I think it belongs to Luna." I stared at her, speechless. "You're okay with this?" She rolled her eyes, but the gesture was fond. "Leo, you're my brother. It's weird, and I don't totally get it, but you're happy. That's what matters." Then, softer, "I just wish you'd told me you were struggling." That evening, after dinner, Mom found me staring out the living room window. "Your aunt called," she said, coming to stand beside me. "She told me how much you enjoyed the party." I nodded, unable to speak. "Leo," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I found your old sketchbooks last year. The ones from middle school you thought you'd thrown away." She took a deep breath. Page after page of girls in beautiful dresses. Knights in flowing capes. I wondered. But it wasn't my story to tell. Then she reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small, ornate brass key. It was for the old steamer trunk in the attic. The one with Maeve painted on the side. "Your aunt left some things behind when she went to college," Mom said, her voice a whisper. "She told me to give you this key when I thought you were ready." The trunk smelled of cedar and old paper and secrets. Inside, beneath layers of tissue paper, a yellowed photo of Aunt Maeve at 16, her hair cropped short, wearing a boy's suit and tie, a defiant look in her eyes. A diary with a broken lock. One entry, dated 1988, read, "They tell me I have to choose a girl or a boy. But some days, I feel like a storm. Both and neither." And at the very bottom, wrapped in silk, a simple, sky blue dress with a Peter Pan collar. "My size." "She wanted you to know," Mom whispered, her hand on my shoulder, "that you're not the first person in this family to walk a different path." A month later, I stood in my room, now painted a soft, dusky blue. The person in the mirror wore a denim skirt and a striped t-shirt. There, my hair a little longer, held back with a simple clip. Not a costume. Not a secret. Just me. Chloe burst in, holding up 2 tickets to a concert. "Aunt Maeve's taking us shopping for your birthday first." Real shopping this time. I hesitated, a familiar knot of fear tightening in my stomach. What if someone from school sees me? Mom appeared in the doorway, car keys jingling in her hand. She met my eyes in the mirror, her own gaze clear and steady. "Then, my love," she said, with a smile that finally reached her eyes, "they'll see how beautiful you are." At the mall, something miraculous happened. A few people glanced. Nobody pointed. Nobody laughed. A saleswoman in a brightly lit store smiled at me. "That color would be lovely with your eyes. Would you like to try it on?" And in that moment, with Aunt Maeve's steady hand on my shoulder, Chloe arguing with me good-naturedly over which pair of boots was better, and Mom snapping a photo on her phone like it was the most normal day in the world, I understood. This wasn't the end of Leo's story. It was the first page of ours. The school gates felt less like an entrance and more like a stage curtain. My new backpack, a simple canvas one I'd painted with swirling constellations, felt like both a shield and a target. Chloe nudged me, her own bag slung confidently over her shoulder. "Breathe, Luna." But how could I? Today was the first day I'd walked through these gates as me. Not in a dress, not yet. Just jeans and a soft lavender hoodie, my hair a little longer, the silver moon charm glinting at my throat. It was a quiet statement, but it felt deafeningly loud. By second period, the whispers had started. A ripple effect through the crowded hallways. "Is that Leo Chin? I heard he wears dresses now. My cousins saw him at the mall. Weird." I kept my eyes fixed on my locker, my knuckles white as I fumbled with the combination. Then, a crumpled piece of paper landed by my shoe. Not thrown at me, just dropped. My stomach twisted. I unfolded it. The art room. Lunch. I have a question about acrylics. Hey, Alex. The boy from my English class who sat in the back, filling entire notebooks with intricate, fantastical drawings. He'd never spoken a word to me. I expected an ambush. A prank. I spent all of morning glory expecting the worst. Instead, I found him alone, surrounded by half-finished canvases, his hands smudged with charcoal. He didn't look up as I entered. He shoved a sketchbook across a paint-splattered table, his own hands shaking slightly. "You're good with color," he mumbled, his face burning red. "I can't get the shadows right on the fabric." I opened the book and froze. Page after page of stunning, elaborate dress designs. Ball gowns that looked like captured nebulae, sundresses that seemed woven from light. Each one was meticulously detailed, with notes on fabric and drape. His voice was barely a whisper. "How did you do it? Walk in today? Not care what they say?" He wasn't asking about my art. He was asking about my courage. And in his question, I saw my own fear reflected back at me, and suddenly, it felt smaller. We started meeting in the quiet of the art room every lunch. We were an unlikely pair, the girl who was learning her own name, and the quiet boy who dreamed in silk and watercolor. "Does this line make the shoulder look too severe?" he'd ask, pointing to a design. "No," I'd say, my confidence growing with each conversation. "It makes her look like she could command an army." "Keep it." He became my anchor in the stormy seas of high school. When a substitute teacher called out Leo 3 times and the snickers started, it was Alex who created a diversion by accidentally knocking over an entire tray of watercolors, forcing the teacher to abandon the attendance sheet. A small, silent act of solidarity that meant more than any grand gesture. On the 1-year anniversary of the pond incident, another package arrived from Aunt Maeve. Inside was a card. "Luna, the world will always try to shrink you into a box it understands. Don't let it. Wear the damn dress. Love. Your favorite aunt, who once wore a tuxedo to her own confirmation." Tucked inside was a gift card to the city's most exclusive fabric store. At the bottom of the card, she'd added a PS. "Bring your friend. The artist." So we went. Alex's eyes were as wide as saucers as he ran his hands over bolts of velvet and satin. He'd never been in a place like this. And I realized, with a jolt, that I was no longer the one being led. I was holding the map. That spring, the drama club announced they were putting on a Midsummer Night's Dream. Alex, emboldened, submitted a portfolio of costume designs. They were so breathtaking, so unlike anything the school had ever seen, that they gave him the job on the spot. Chloe, inspired, switched her college major focus from political science to fashion merchandising. And me? I was standing in front of my mirror again. This time, I was looking at a prom dress. Alex had designed it, and we had spent weeks sewing it together. It was the color of a stormy twilight sky, with tiny, embroidered silver stars on the bodice that matched my moon necklace. Mom knocked softly and entered, holding out a small, velvet box. Inside was the ornate brass key from the attic trunk, now cleaned and polished and hanging from a simple silver chain. "For all the doors you're still going to unlock," she whispered, her eyes shining. I hugged her tight, the scent of her perfume a comforting anchor. From downstairs, Alex's voice yelled up, "Hurry up, Your Majesty. Your carriage awaits." And I laughed, a real, free, belly-deep laugh, because all of this, was so much better than a fairy tale. This was just the beginning. Years later, the hum of sewing machines was the soundtrack to my life. The prom dress, a Twilight masterpiece, had been just the beginning. It secured Alex a full scholarship to a prestigious design school in New York, and I, with a portfolio full of my own evolving designs and a passionate essay about identity and aesthetics, was accepted into the same program. Chloe, naturally, enrolled in the business school just a few blocks away. We pooled our resources and rented a tiny, sun-drenched apartment that was always covered in fabric scraps and charcoal dust. We launched a small online brand from our living room, calling it The Attic Key, a nod to the moment it all truly began. We didn't just make clothes, we made declarations. Asymmetrical jackets for binder wearers, formal gowns with deep, practical pockets, suits cut from soft fabrics that blurred every line society had tried to draw. Our thesis collection, a line of gender-fluid formal wear called androgyne, went viral. It wasn't just the designs, it was the story behind them. Our story. Which is how I found myself back in our hometown, standing in a brightly lit room at the local LGBTQ+ community center. Alex was beside me, Chloe was managing the welcome table, and Aunt Maeve and Mom were in the front row, beaming. We were hosting our first youth workshop, Designing Your Truth. The room was full of nervous, creative energy. Teenagers sketched in notebooks, hesitantly touching the bolts of fabric we'd brought. My eyes landed on one kid in the corner, maybe 14, with cropped green hair and anxious eyes. They were hunched over a sketchbook, looking so much like Alex had all those years ago. Later, as the workshop wound down, they approached me, clutching their book to their chest. "Hi," they whispered. "I'm Kai." "It's nice to meet you, Kai," I said gently. "Can I see what you're working on?" Hesitantly, Kai opened the sketchbook. It was filled with drawings of themselves, wearing incredible outfits, a sharp-shouldered vest made of what looked like stained glass, flowing pants that dissolved into mist at the ankles, a silver circlet. It was a wardrobe for the person they wanted to be. "There, just ideas," Kai mumbled, their cheeks flushed. "I don't know how to. I wouldn't even know where to start." I looked at their drawings, then back at their face, and I saw everything. The fear. The longing. The burning, brilliant spark of a self waiting to be seen. I thought of the pond, of the cold water, and the terror of that first reflection. I thought of the velvet dress, the pinafore, the key. Slowly, I unclasped the silver chain from around my neck, the one with the small, crescent moon charm that Chloe had given me so long ago. "Every story needs a starting point," I said, pressing the necklace into Kai's hand. Their fingers closed around it, their eyes widening with disbelief. This was mine. "Now, maybe it can be yours." Alex came over and laid a hand on Kai's shoulder, peering at their sketchbook with a genuine, infectious excitement. "Okay, the physics on those misty pants are a challenge," he said with a grin. "But I have an idea. Let's go talk about textiles." As Alex led a stunned but hopeful Kai over to the fabric table, I caught my mom's eye across the room. She was wiping away a tear, but her smile was the brightest thing I had ever seen. Standing there, in that room filled with the rustle of fabric and the low murmur of possibility, I finally understood. The clothes were never the point. They weren't armor to hide behind. They were the key. The key that unlocked a dusty trunk in an attic, the key that opened a door in my own heart, the key that let the girl in the mirror walk out into the world. And the most beautiful thing I realized was watching her hold the door open for the next person to walk through.